welcome to World News Program with me, Madam Zian, to the headlines. At least 110 Palestinians killed, 133 wounded in ongoing Israeli airstrikes on Gaza, and Hamas urges leaders to global action to halt the aggression. In Sudan, the army nears control of presidential palace as violence against civilians escalates. And EU leaders discuss continued support for Kiev, and Moscow accuses Europe of militarization. Hello and welcome back to your program. First in our news, at least 110 Palestinians have been killed since Thursday dawn due to ongoing Israeli airstrikes on the besieged Strip. The Palestinian Ministry of Health in Gaza stated that 85 bodies had arrived at hospitals across the territory following Israeli attacks and massacres carried out since the early hours of Thursday. The Ministry of Health confirmed that 133 wounded individuals have been transported to hospitals, noting that many victims remain trapped under the rubble with rescue efforts ongoing. And more than 50 Palestinians have been killed and others injured in intense Israeli airstrikes on Beit Lahya, northern Gaza, since dawn. According to a statement from the Palestinian Health Ministry in Gaza on Thursday, at least 50 martyrs have arrived at hospitals following Israeli airstrikes targeting residential homes in Beit Lahya. Forty Palestinians have been killed and others injured since Thursday dawn in Israeli airstrikes on homes in southern Gaza. Palestinian medical sources confirmed that 40 martyrs were taken to the Al-Nasser medical complex and the European hospital following Israeli bombardment targeting Rafah and Khan Yunis. And Dr. Khalil Dakran, spokesperson for the Palestinian Ministry of Health in Gaza, reported Thursday that 710 martyrs and over 900 injured have been hospitalized in the past 48 hours. He stated that 70% of the injured are children and women, with most in critical condition. Many succumbed due to delayed emergency response caused by medical equipment shortages. He also noted that only 15% of patients have been allowed treatment outside Gaza. Marwan Al-Hams, director of field hospitals in Gaza, stated that the collapsed health system cannot accommodate all patients wounded amid ongoing Israeli aggression. On Thursday, he confirmed that the dire conditions have led to the deaths of dozens of injured individuals. He also highlighted severe shortages of resources, medical staff, and fuel, urging the immediate opening of crossings to allow aid entry.
The overall health situation in the Gaza Strip is critical, especially in hospitals, which are overcrowded with the wounded and injured. The intensive care units cannot accommodate more patients, and those who are admitted are dying due to the lack of medicines, medical supplies, and essential medical services. There is also a severe shortage of fuel. Furthermore, there is a critical shortage of medical staff. We urgently need field hospitals and the entry of medical delegations to assist us, especially in rare specialties. For example, we have only one pathologist in the field of histopathology, which is the study of tissue structures.
And in turn, Hamas leader Izzat al-Rishq said that the criminal enemy proves time and again that it only knows betrayal and does not abide by any agreement, calling for urgent and immediate global action and pressure by all possible means to stop the aggression.
Time and again, this criminal enemy proves that it only knows betrayal, does not adhere to any covenant or agreement, and even turns against them to continue its filthy war, killing innocent children and wreaking havoc on women and the elderly in scenes beyond description. What is urgently needed is immediate action and pressure by all possible means, politically and publicly, to stop this criminal aggression, break the unjust siege, and save our people from the Zionist killing and destruction machine.
UNRWA Commissioner General confirmed the death of 5 of the agency's employees in Gaza in recent days, bringing the total number of fatalities among UN staff to 200 84 including teachers, doctors, and nurses who are providing services to the most vulnerable groups. In a post on the X platform, Philippe Lazzarini noted the continued Zionist air and sea bombardment for the third consecutive day, warning that the worst is yet to come amid the ground invasion that has isolated the northern part of the Gaza Strip from the southern part.
Israeli forces' bombardment continues from air and sea for the third day. We are fearing that the worst is yet to come, given the ongoing ground invasion, separating the north from the south. Evacuation orders forcing people to flee were issued, impacting tens of thousands of people. The vast majority have been already displaced, treated like pinballs, since the war began nearly 1.5 years ago.
The Human Rights Watch has accused Israel of committing war crimes during its occupation of hospitals in Gaza. The Human Rights Organization report stated that Israeli ground forces committed clear war crimes while seizing hospitals and other facilities, displacing deadly brutality toward patients. It further noted that Israeli forces cut off water and electricity, leading to the deaths of patients and the wounded. Algeria has called on the international community to compel the occupation to implement international law and ensure full compliance with international humanitarian law. Tawfiq Qudri, a member of Algeria's permanent mission to the UN, stated during a UN Security Council session on Palestine that the ongoing violations of international laws and treaties by the occupation forces are the root cause of the suffering in the occupied Palestinian territories. He also urged increased pressure to enforce a ceasefire and halt violations against Palestinians.
Since October the 7th, members of this Council have constantly adopted resolutions calling for the release of all hostages. We have easily reached agreement on this matter, but we have failed to achieve one crucial call: the immediate and permanent ceasefire. During times of conflict, the protection of human dignity must remain a priority. Suffering cannot justify another suffering. However, it is with great regret that we observe the Israeli occupying powers' blatant disregard for these fundamental principles.
The Algerian diplomat called for non-selectivity in the implementation of international law and the avoidance of double standards, stressing that what is unfolded in Gaza today is a blatant example of such double standards.
Algeria, as a serious member of the international community, firmly respects and upholds all its international obligations. We firmly believe that the law is the cornerstone of international law. Without adherence to international law, we risk descending into a jungle where might make right and injustice prevails. Regrettably, this is precisely what we witness today. In the occupied Palestinian territories, what we see unfolding before us is not the rule of law, but rather an environment where no rules are respected and basic human dignity is disregarded.
And in the same context, Algeria called on the international community to act swiftly to ensure that the occupying power fully respects the ceasefire agreement in Gaza. Speaking at the 58th session of the Human Rights Council, Algeria's permanent representative to the UN in Geneva, Rachid Bladhan, warned that the resumption of Israeli aggression plunges the region back into a cycle of killing, starvation, and deprivation, jeopardizing efforts to stabilize the ceasefire and begin reconstruction.
تدين الجزائر أشد العبارات استئناف الاحتلال الصهيوني لعدوانه.
Algeria strongly condemns the resumption of the Zionist occupation's brutal aggression against the Palestinian people in the Gaza Strip, in blatant violation of the ceasefire agreement signed last January, and with total disregard for international conventions and norms, at a time when the international community was optimistic about consolidating the ceasefire in Gaza, alleviating the suffering of the Palestinian people, and launching reconstruction efforts in Palestinian territory. This renewed aggression shatters all these hopes and plunges the region back into a cycle of killing, starvation, and deprivation from the most basic means of survival. In light of these grave developments, Algeria calls on the international community to act swiftly to ensure that the occupying forces comply with the ceasefire agreement with all its provisions, and at every stage. Algeria also reaffirms its unwavering solidarity with the Palestinian people and its constant support for them until they achieve their national aspirations and establish their independent, sovereign state with Al-Quds al-Sharif as its capital.
And Algerian Foreign Minister Ahmed Attaf discussed the latest developments in Gaza with Jordanian Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Ayman al-Safadi amid renewed Israeli aggression. According to the Algerian Foreign Ministry, both ministers in a phone call voiced concern over the collapse of ceasefire efforts and humanitarian relief. They warned that this threatens a just resolution to the Palestinian issue. They also agreed to strengthen coordination on Palestine and other regional matters, particularly within the Arab League. And 13 Israeli settlers were injured on Thursday morning as they fled to shelters following rocket sirens after a missile launched from Yemen-targeted Ben Gurion airport. Israeli media outlets reported that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was evacuated from the Knesset to a secure location after sirens sounded in occupied Al-Quds, where he was attending a parliamentary session. Houthi military spokesman Yahya Sari announced on Thursday morning that the Houthis had targeted Israel's Ben Gurion airport with a hypersonic ballistic missile. Sari'a said that the Houthis would continue to escalate their operations against U.S. warships in the Red Sea in response to the targeting of civilians in Yemen, adding that the U.S. would fail to prevent Yemen from targeting the Zionist occupation in response to its massacres in Gaza.
The missile force of the Yemeni armed forces carried out a qualitative military operation targeting Ben Gurion Airport in the occupied Jaffa region with a Palestine II hypersonic ballistic missile. This operation successfully achieved its objective, thanks be to Allah.
And in Sudan, Sudanese state television reported on Thursday that the army is nearing full control of the presidential palace in Khartoum. Eyewitnesses and military sources told Reuters that heavy clashes erupted late Wednesday night near the palace with explosions and airstrikes targeting downtown Khartoum. Other sources stated that the army has tightened its siege on central Khartoum, where the presidential palace and government headquarters are located, in an effort to secure the area of sovereignty. They added that the army repelled an attempt by the RSF to bring in reinforcements. The Sudanese armed forces announced that they had eliminated the commander and 15 fighters from the rapid support forces as they attempted to infiltrate Al-Fasher. According to Sudan news agency, the army's infantry units in Al-Fasher continue their operations against the RSF, successfully ambushing and killing an RSF commander and 15 of his fighters. Additionally, the attack destroyed 3 Toyota Land Cruisers that were allegedly being used to target civilians. And European Union leaders in Brussels on Thursday are discussing ways to continue supporting Ukraine in addition to efforts to ensure the continued competitiveness of the bloc's economy. EU Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas expressed hope that 2 million artillery shells would be pledged to Ukraine to bolster its defenses, especially after failing to garner sufficient support in recent weeks for an initiative aimed at providing military aid worth between $20 billion and $40 billion.
450 million European Union citizens should not have to depend on 340 million Americans to defend ourselves against 140 million Russians who cannot defeat 38 million Ukrainians. We really can do better. It's time for us to take responsibility for the defense of Europe.
And the Kremlin said that European countries are planning to militarize themselves instead of pursuing peace, coinciding with a meeting of European Union military leaders Thursday to discuss support for Ukraine. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov explained in a press statement that the indications coming from Brussels and European capitals point toward advancing plans to militarize Europe, which contradicts the current momentum in Russia and the US. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said on Wednesday that he did not discuss with his U.S. counterpart Donald Trump the possibility of the U.S. taking control of the Russian-controlled Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. According to Reuters, Zelensky confirmed during a press conference that his talks with Trump also did not address the status of Crimea. Previous reports indicated that Donald Trump was considering recognizing Crimea as Russian territory.
President Trump asked me what I think about this power plant. I told him that I won't work unless it is under Ukrainian control. It is illegal. It won't be able to work. If the Americans think about finding a way out of this situation, if they want to take it away from the Russians, if they want to invest in it, modernize it, this is an open question. We can talk about it, but we definitely did not discuss ownership with President Trump.
And Russian President Vladimir Putin reaffirmed Russia's readiness to enhance all forms of cooperation with Syria's leadership. In a letter sent to Syrian President Ahmad al-Shara, Putin urged Syria's leadership to intensify efforts to stabilize the country as soon as possible, emphasizing that Moscow supports all decisions that promote the unity of the Syrian people. German Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock stated on Thursday that Syria's future should be determined by its own people through a sovereign decision. During a meeting with her Syrian counterpart, Assad Shaybani, Baerbock stressed that foreign intervention in Syria has only brought chaos in the past. She called for Syrian reconciliation and urged all parties to exercise maximum restraint to avoid undermining Syria's internal stability. And Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi said on Thursday that his country will certainly not engage in direct negotiations with the U.S. administration under pressure, threats, and increased sanctions, emphasizing that Iran will respond in the coming days to U.S. President Donald Trump's message to Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei. Araghchi explained that the response would be sent through a third party, noting that Trump's message has a threatening tone, but he claims there are opportunities in it.
Trump's message is a threat, but it claims to contain opportunities. We paid close attention to all the points raised in the message, and we will examine both the threats and the opportunities in our response. There is an opportunity behind every threat.
Algeria reaffirmed its commitment to promoting and protecting all human rights, including the right to development. During the 58th session of the Human Rights Council, Algeria's permanent representative to the UN in Geneva, Rachid Bledhan, emphasized the need to respect national sovereignty in addressing human rights issues. He stressed that states have the right to independently choose their path for strengthening human rights in line with their capacities and political, historical, social, religious, and cultural specificities.
Algeria emphasizes the importance of constructive dialogue, cooperation, and respect for sovereignty in addressing human rights issues. It stresses the necessity of respecting each country's right to independently choose its own path for enhancing human rights in accordance with its capabilities. Algeria also underscores the need for the Council to fulfill its mandate and to embody the required international cooperation to promote and protect human rights, translating it into decisions that reflect global consensus and advance the human rights agenda as a shared heritage of humanity.
Algeria's permanent representative to the UN in Geneva also emphasized the importance of adhering to neutrality, objectivity, and avoiding selectivity politicization and double standards in addressing human rights issues.
نؤكد أهمية التزام الدول بمبادئ العالمية.
We reaffirm the importance of states' commitment to the principles of universality, impartiality, and objectivity, while avoiding selectivity, politicization, and double standards. We also stress the need to address human rights situations in all countries equally and to prohibit the selective targeting of certain states while turning a blind eye to grave violations committed in other countries. Such practices contradict the purposes of which the Council was established and undermine its working methods.
Algerian President Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune extended his congratulations to his Tunisian counterpart Qais Said in a phone call on the occasion of Tunisia's 69th Independence Day. A statement from the Algerian presidency noted that the two leaders expressed satisfaction with the excellent relations between their countries in recent years. They also exchanged greetings for the holy month of Ramadan, wishing prosperity for both nations. Additionally, President Tebboune offered his condolences to President Said on the passing of a relative, according to the statement. Algerian President Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune has dismissed Noureddin Ben Brahim from his position as head of the National Civil Society Observatory, according to a statement from the presidency. The same source added that Tebboune appointed Ibtissam Hamlawi as Ben Brahim's successor. The Algerian government has acknowledged the decision of the French judiciary to reject the requests for the extradition of Abdeslam Bouchouareb, who was convicted by the Algerian judiciary on multiple charges of corruption, embezzlement, and abuse of power, causing significant losses to Algeria's public treasury. A statement from the Algerian Ministry of Foreign Affairs pointed out that the Algerian government seizes this opportunity to highlight the complete absence of cooperation from the French government in the field of mutual legal assistance, despite the existence of numerous international and bilateral agreements dedicated to this purpose.
The Algerian government has taken note of the French judiciary's decision to reject the extradition request for Abdeslam Bouchouareb, who was convicted in Algeria on multiple corruption, embezzlement, and influence-peddling charges that caused significant losses to the public treasury, without waiving its right to pursue other legal remedies. The Algerian government seized this opportunity to highlight France's complete lack of cooperation in judicial assistance, despite multiple international and bilateral agreements in place for this purpose.
The Algerian government affirmed that in its efforts to recover looted assets from the country, it has consistently and continuously faced unjustified delays, evasions, and procrastinations from the French side.
As part of its effort to recover looted national assets, Algeria has continuously encountered unjustified delays, evasions, and procrastination from the French side. This is evident in France's failure to respond to 25 judicial requests submitted by Algeria.
The Algerian government also noted that France's stance is distinct and different from that of the other European partners, who cooperate with the Algerian authorities with sincerity, honesty, and without any hidden agendas.
It is worth noting that France's stance stands in stark contrast to that of the European partners, who cooperate with the Algerian authorities sincerely and transparently without hidden agendas. These partners recognize the particular importance and sensitivity of the issue of illicitly acquired assets for Algeria.
The Algerian government also noted that France's stance is distinct and different from that of the other European partners who cooperate with the Algerian authorities with sincerity, honesty, and without any agendas. Hussam Barkan will tell you more details on this.
It seems that French Interior Minister Bruno Retailleau is trying to make Algeria a scapegoat instead of acknowledging his own failure and lack of vision. This is how French parliamentarians and politicians have described his repeated outbursts against Algeria and Algerians in France. His statements, along with those of other far-right figures, lack the most basic diplomatic norms and international legal principles.
It looks like you've chosen the wrong ministry because all you talk about is foreign affairs, especially Algeria. The expulsion orders for Algerians are no different from those other countries in the region, which shows that you're acting in the interest of the French people, but for your own political gain. You claim to be defending France, but how can you do that while trampling on its laws and the rights of millions of French Muslims? Algeria is not blackmailing France, you are blackmailing us. You borrow policies from across the Atlantic, but you're not Trump, just a loudspeaker.
Like a weak man hiding behind noise, Retailleau tries to convince himself and his fellow citizens that he's becoming a key player in French politics, even threatening to resign if his decisions are not implemented. His move exposes his political opportunism and his attempt to build a personal legacy at Algeria's expense. He has already submitted his candidacy for the presidency of the Republicans, using it as a stepping stone to position himself as a successor to Macron in 2027.
Bruno Retailleau's obsession with Algeria is in itself a problem. It's a pure provocation and a fixation on the past that blinds him from thinking about the future. His policies are reactionary, lacking any real vision, by constantly making Algeria his scapegoat. He is admitting his own incompetence and intellectual bankruptcy. Everyone knows his inflammatory rhetoric is nothing more than a cheap electoral maneuver, pandering to the worst racist instincts.
Retailleau's bizarre statements have sparked widespread condemnation in France's top political circles, exposing the depths to which some politicians have sunk. Figures popped up by media arms that promote the agenda of an emboldened far-right in a French political landscape struggling with confusion, decline, and improvisation.
Ladies and gentlemen, that brings our coverage to a close for tonight. If you miss any part of it, you can always check it on our social media platforms. Thank you for joining us and have a great night.